A lot of changes came in Terraria's most recent updates. Some of them have been very well received, like all the secret seeds. Others are a bit controversial, like removing whip stacking. But that's just the obvious stuff on the surface. Some of the changes are mind-boggling, and I've barely seen anyone talk about them, and while I love the update overall, they're just ridiculous. So, let's go through the changelog, bit by bit, and talk about everything that happened. Thanks to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. I'm just going to be talking about what was already in the game that was changed, not new stuff. This one isn't important, but these, oh boy. These melee weapon buffs are ridiculous. Melee was extremely strong in 1.4.4 and it has gotten a lot of buffs. A lot of uncommon early game weapons got various buffs, and phase blades and the key brand got complete reworks, and they're very strong. By clicking the weapon, you can throw it and click again to recall it. If you don't recall it, it embeds itself in the ground, dealing damage and knockback to anything it touches. And you can just use a different weapon doing that. There's no opportunity cost. It's like a pre-hard mode Klinger staff. It does deal less damage on the ground, and it's not great on flying enemies, but there's really no reason not to get one. Even if you're not melee, you can just throw it on the ground. It's got a hard mode upgrade, and the key brand late game is even better. I really like that these weapons got a buff. They needed it, but I'm not the biggest fan of how they're designed in a way that just gives every player an extremely powerful tool that there's no reason not to use and scales throughout the entire game. I'm concerned about the meta just turning into, okay, well, you always get your phase blade, you always upgrade it to a phase saber, and then, the key brand's pretty easy to get late game, and then you just always have this item that you're throwing out to deal with crowds of enemies or invasions, regardless of what you're doing. I don't want it to be a de facto answer that you just always get every game, and right now, it kind of feels like it might be. The Storm Spear got a serious buff. This is great because the Storm Spear only spawns in the bottom part of the underground desert, and previously you could only really get it once you had pretty good weapons, so it always felt kinda lackluster. Now, it shoots much further. The purple clubberfish inflicts confusion, and so does the mandible blade, because what Relogic did to it is unbelievable. They gave a projectile to it, buffed its attack speed, and its crit chance. It's extremely easy to get. A 2% drop rate from the common enemies in the biome with the highest spawn rates in the game is nothing. And it has a gigantic hitbox, strong knockback, high rate of fire, and good range. No ammunition, strong damage, it can deal with basically every pre-hard mode enemy very easily. It's great for the Eye of Cthulhu, it's incredible against bats. This thing does everything and overshadows the Storm Spear buff. I got both on a playthrough and the Mandible Blade felt way better to use. The Mandible Blade right now is so strong that it's easily the second best defense against goblin thieves trying to steal your personal information. The best is using Surfshark VPN, the sponsor of this video. Many players make the mistake of using unsecured connections on public Wi-Fi, which can allow anyone else connected to that Wi-Fi with malicious intentions to steal your information. It's why you should never connect to public Wi-Fi unless you have a VPN. It works as a buffer, encrypting your data and allowing a secure connection to keep you safe. And you can do a whole lot more than just secure a public Wi-Fi connection. Are you in a biome where certain websites or apps are censored or unavailable? Using a VPN, you can tell the website you're accessing it from a different location, allowing you to get full access. It's a great way to keep your actual location private. And it's completely refundable within 30 days with a money-back guarantee. Worst case scenario, you try it out and you can get a full refund if you're not a fan. Make sure you set a reminder on your calendar. Best case scenario, you've got a great tool for keeping your online activity secure and avoiding location-blocked content. There's really not much that you're risking. You can pick up 4 extra months by going to surfshark.com/sorbetcafe or using the coupon code sorbetcafe at checkout. And it's not just the Mandible Blade. The next weapon on the list, the Stylish Scissors, are even better. They're faster, longer range, and have a 12 DPS debuff. That's huge for pre-hard mode. Poison is 6 and On Fire is 4. If you get a Stylist, she's an easy ticket for a completely busted weapon. It's not listed here, but they also pierce once. You can really tell that Relogic has a favorite child. And we're just getting started on the melee weapons. The Ale Tosser is no longer a ranged weapon, it's a melee weapon, it got a huge damage buff, and an attack speed and projectile speed buff, and it deals AoE damage. It was a bit of a meme weapon before, now it's very good. Honestly, it's not even overpowered, it is post-evil, and to be honest, melee has so many busted weapons at this point that this doesn't even seem very good in comparison. 5 years ago, this would have been an incredible weapon. After 1.4.4, I don't quite get why it's a melee weapon. There was a bit of a joke before this update that melee was just mage without mana or ranger without ammo, and I mean, we just got an infinite fast projectile spam weapon in pre-hard mode, and a weapon that's basically a clinger staff, and a long-range lightning bolt, and now, literally a ranged weapon. It even consumes ammo. That's Ranger's whole thing. What even is a melee weapon anymore? You guys know how Summoner's whole thing was cycling between weapons and whip stacking? Well, that's gone. But don't worry, melee has that now with boomerang stacking, because you can swap between boomerangs when throwing them. Because melee just gets to look at things and go, so it's the same type of stand as Star of Platinum, and just take that ability for itself. Some small buffs, not super consequential, and then synergy increased by 100%. I didn't know what that meant, and I sure as hell was not expecting this. You throw both flails at once if they're both in your inventory, mirrored on the y-axis. They'll hit the same spot if it's directly above or below you. They needed a buff. The blue moon was pretty useless, and this is a really creative way to do it. You're basically power stancing flails. Bug fix for the volcano, machete buff, and a yo-yo damage nerf? A yo-yo nerf? What did the Hellfire do to deserve catching these strays? 1. Yo-yos suck! They're some of Melee's worst weapons, low range, boring effects, and underwhelming damage. And the Hellfire wasn't even the best pre-mech yo-yo, the Amarok was. Why? Why nerf any yo-yo? Okay, you wanted to have more range. Just increase the range. It wasn't underpowered to begin with. You don't have to nerf the damage to compensate. A bit of a classic Kane rework and a giant anchor buff. Pierces enemies, explodes on contact with blocks. This, by the way, can hit through walls over a pretty big distance. Hell, you can straight up attack through blocks even without it exploding. It's very strong and annihilates the pirate invasion, even behind blocks. Obsidian Swordfish and Beam Sword buff, those are nice, and a Shadow Flame Knife buff? It was already one of Melee's best pre-mech options for the bosses. How come the Hellfire has to limp to the finish line and get less damage to hit a little further away, but the long-range melee options just get a 15% damage buff? And then, we have an actual railgun. The Paladin's Hammer, with no melee speed bonuses, hits off-screen. With melee speed bonuses, it takes like 3 seconds to fly back because that's how much range it has. And it applies a defense debuff, and it got a damage buff, and it explodes. I said it before, but what are melee weapons anymore? Sure, this weapon isn't great on bosses, but you can't even say that melee weapons are supposed to be medium range when this thing can explode in a big AoE to hit enemies at the edge of the screen. This is basically a rocket launcher. Possessed Hatchet has a strong debuff, Golem Fist explodes because why not? Just make everything explode at this point, and the Flare-On gets a buff and an alternate flail version. Okay, one thing you might have noticed, very strong buffs and almost no nerfs. The only nerfs were to yo-yos. Melee was extremely strong in 1.4.4, and it's even better now, with very strong and versatile options getting buffed throughout the entire game. So what about the other classes? Shroomite Head and Quivers apply to ammo now. This is a good change. It was unintuitive before. Functionally, they're very similar, but now you don't have situations like rocket launchers not wanting to use Shroomite armor. And technically, we get a Sandgun buff. The Sandgun is one of the most overpowered weapons in the game, and it got buffed by 1 base damage from a bug fix. Spiky Balls get buffed to last longer, Harpoon got a full rework. It used to be a close-range DPS monster, now it's more of a mid-range piercing weapon. I think it's a good rework overall. It was pretty hard to use the Harpoon for anything except Deerclops or Skeletron before. Small buffs to some early game guns and a revolver rework. You can buff the firing speed by manually clicking instead of using auto-fire, but the weapon is worse by default. I'll be honest, the revolver is such a rare weapon that I almost never got to use it before this patch, and I doubt I'll be able to use it much after this patch. It is a cool effect though. Hellwing Bow bug fix and hard mode darts were absolutely gutted. And I can't understand why. 1. They all take mithril anvils to craft now. This isn't that consequential, but it does make it so that using a blowgun with them is a lot less of a strategy for the very start of hard mode. Cursed darts had their piercing removed from the projectiles they drop, and the main projectile now pierces once. This is a giant nerf. It is significantly worse against the destroyer and invasions now, and a single pierce on the main projectile does not come anywhere close to making up for that. Ichor darts got a hefty damage nerf, and crystal darts bounce less and get reduced damage for each bounce. Why did the darts need such a big nerf? They weren't overpowered. They were popular, but I think they were popular because Ranger has almost no weapons that have unique and cool effects, and the dart weapons let people do new things, and players like that. It already took, like, on average 75 souls to get a dart weapon. It takes 10 for an Onyx Blaster. I just don't get why. Small buffs to flamethrowers and piranha gun, big buff to tactical shotgun. Maybe it's kind of okay now? Big buffs to the ranged weapons from the moons. The candy corn rifle is potential lifetime reduced from 10 seconds to 5 seconds? Huh? What? Okay, so I assume that because the weapon got changed to local iframes, the developers are stopping players from building up a lot of candy corns to deal more damage, because each one can deal their damage together. It did get a very big damage buff, so maybe that's a balance problem? The weapon should be a lot better against invasions and events now, although it's no stake launcher. I don't think the boss performance will be that impressive. These are good buffs. The weapons from the moons for Ranger were very lackluster, and while these aren't the most exciting, better stats are nice. So, Ranger got a lot of small buffs, mostly stat changes to a lot of weapons, some reworks to the harpoon and revolver, and a huge nerf to darts. And now on to Mage, and don't worry, Relogic did so much to buff the underground desert. You've got Digtoist, the auto elevator item, the Mandible Blade is incredible, the Storm Spear got a big buff, the Thunder Zapper had its mana cost reduced from 7 to 6. That's right, the class that has probably the worst early game, the one that needs the most buffs, gets a completely meaningless mana cost reduction while Melee gets mega buffed in a dozen different ways. The Space Gun effectively got the nerf that it received in 1.4.4 undone and a range-based damage buff. It's a pretty nice buff. The lasers get bigger and stronger the further away the target is. This is great. It was very underwhelming, and getting a damage nerf while also being made post-evil was baffling in 1.4.4. It should feel a lot better to use now. Laser Rifle has the same buff and synergizes with Meteor Armor. The Magic Dagger got a rework to be more of a piercing weapon, less of a single target weapon. Great buffs to early hard mode Mage. Projectile velocity was a huge issue with these weapons, especially on fast bosses like the Twins and Skeletron Prime. Early hard mode Mage should feel a lot better. That's about it. Very little for Mage in this update. Summoner got unique modifiers for all of its summoning weapons. Whips still use melee modifiers. These modifiers can buff damage, knockback, tag damage, or give armor penetration. It's a mix of flat damage bonuses and percentage-based damage bonuses. The best modifier gives 8 flat damage and 15% damage, which is pretty similar to using Ruthless with tag damage from a decent whip thrown in as an extra. Because of that, Summoner had whip stacking removed. Functionally, I don't think this changes Summoner power that much for most of the game. Players that didn't whip stack will find their minions stronger, players who did will have similar strength, and those who heavily whip stacked will find themselves weaker. For most of the game, late game, these flat damage bonuses from modifiers fall off quite a bit. The Flink's staff had its crafting requirements increased. Why? This isn't balance, it's just tedium. Players are still going to go get a Flink staff, they're just going to be more annoyed when doing it because it's going to take another 10 minutes. Spiders get pushed to after a Mithril Anvil. Again, feels a bit unnecessary, not game-changing, just mildly inconvenient. Small changes to summoners. The Blade Staff tag damage is just because of the whip stacking thing being removed, and whip stacking was removed. This isn't just the tag bonus thing, it also means you can't get buffs or special effects by swapping between whips. Kaleidoscope and Morningstar were nerfed, Dark Harvest was buffed. Whips also got a random attack variation, which is just worse. These different patterns have smaller hitboxes, which means whips are less consistent and subject to randomly having their hitboxes changed. The distance is the same, it's just the width of the arc that changes. And that's really sad. It's kind of a slap in the face. Summoner is supposed to be getting all this new content and reworks, but the fundamental mechanics of the class were heavily altered, and this one is just a straight up penalty. It doesn't feel good to have your attacks miss because of no fault of your own. I really hope they change this. Maybe different whips can be given the different animations, or the hitboxes between animations can be made consistent. That's it, weapon-wise. Honestly, the existing Summoner content kinda got shafted. Flink Staff and Spider Staff were made harder to obtain, whip mechanics were made inconsistent and heavily nerfed through whip stacking removal, especially late in the game. The minions get special reforges, the whips don't. I think mixed Summoner using other class weapons while having summons is a lot more appealing now after the whip changes. For non-weapons, Dead Man's Sweater got a buff. It's an interesting idea. It should make traps significantly less deadly at the beginning of the game. Don't let the 300 HP thing fool you. The main thing is that it halves trap damage. It's like a banner for traps. It does protect you from getting one-shot late game, but you're not going to want to wear it past the early game, and by the time you have 300 HP, you probably have a Danger Sense potion readily available. You can Shimmer Cycle Gladiator Armor. That's just a convenience thing. These are pretty cool minor changes. Molten Armor getting an Obsidian Skull effect is great. Yo-Yo accessories got some buffs. Yo-Yos still kinda suck, but it's nice. You can't get insta-killed with a paladin shield anymore, and sadly, you can't use the honeycomb to spawn bees on lava anymore. It's a bit sad for accessory-only playthroughs. Info accessories work in vanity slots now. That's pretty huge. You don't even need to take up inventory space for them anymore. To me, this makes the cell phone even worse because you don't even save inventory space or void bag space anymore. You could just keep them in vanity slots. The Lava Shark lets you actually see in lava now, which is great, and some more miscellaneous buffs. You can now use pylons during boss fights and invasions. You can now use pylons during boss fights and invasions. What? What? Who? What? This is not only completely unnecessary, it's not only a massive buff to pylons, it encourages players to stop interacting with the game, and I don't think that's a good thing. Almost every boss can just be ignored by despawning it with a pylon. Queen Bee and the Destroyer can be cheesed effortlessly with pylons. You can just leave invasions on a whim. I can understand that some players might have been inconvenienced by pylons being inactivated, but I don't think that changing the game to remove the slightest inconveniences that a player can face is a good idea. Pylons were fine the way they were, and this just encourages players to not play the game. They patched the bug where they accidentally made it so skeletons ignore dodges instead of Skeletron, and fixed up some Deerclops issues. That's good because Deerclops was awful in multiplayer and the shield lets you actually dash through her now. Pirates also got nerfed, enemies get pushed by conveyor belts, and jungle bait farming was massively nerfed. In addition to this, buggy statues shimmer into grubbies now, meaning you cannot turn all your bait into buggies with the shimmer. You can definitely tell that Relogic took note of strategies that were very popular previously and nerfed them. Sharks get a spawning bonus when chum is in the water, which is very nice for shark fin farming without shark statues. If you're in hardcore, I think it's worth going to fish in blood moons to pick up chum just so you get more sharks in case you don't get a shark statue. Fewer worms in the desert, and some very minor changes to other enemies. NPCs can arrive without valid houses. I'm not 100% sure on how I feel about this change. It's felt kinda weird, but I think overall it's good for new players so they know that they need to build more houses and that someone can move in. The guide and cyborg get a lot stronger, and the party goal requirement was increased quite a lot. NPCs can attack while in dialogue, which is honestly a little bit annoying because it's kinda hard to get enemies to kill the NPCs now. Tombstones break way faster, which is a great change because they were very frustrating and annoying before. Ghost AI was also changed a bit, and hard mode ore mining should be much easier now because higher tier ores spawn in much larger patches. I don't think this was a very necessary change. I don't think hard mode ore mining was overly tedious, and it should be very fast to get tier 3 hard mode ore if the patches are the size of palladium and cobalt instead of titanium and adamantite. It shortens the mining trip experience, but I don't think that's a great thing. I kind of enjoyed the mining. I really like the early hard mode experience when you're gearing up and trying to get everything together. There's also very little reason to make anything with tier 1 or 2 because you can just get so much more tier 3. Wind and rain also only happen after 1 life crystal. I don't like this change. Honestly, this is one of my least favorite changes in the update. It heavily affects challenges where you're stuck at low HP, and I don't think any of the events in the game were that dangerous, and to be honest, I just liked it when it would rain at the start of the game. It was atmospheric, and that's just not possible anymore. Block swap on lava is very convenient, better axes get more wood, big nerf to the Staff of Regrowth, huge nerf. It can no longer harvest plants out of bloom and get increased yields or seeds, it can only harvest blooming plants. It's a bit sad, it was a very nice thing to be able to do, but it's not the end of the world. Herb farming is still pretty quick with or without harvesting out of bloom. A lot of miscellaneous changes. Water and slime gun actually do something now, purification powder affects the hollow, using wiring to activate snowball cannons actually deals damage, and combining all 3 lava fishing sources gives you an even stronger bonus. You also don't need to sit on toilets anymore when fishing, you can just use a chair. Kites give a buff and automatically get used when AFK. Invisibility is not invisible client side. I kinda dislike this. It means you can't remove your character's sprite when taking pictures, which I happen to do a lot for like thumbnails and builds. Pumpkin pie got mega nerfed to be a minor food buff. It's a very sad day. If you want medium food, you're best off fishing in the desert. Sharpening stations also no longer apply to non-melee weapons when holding out a melee weapon. Bacon no longer comes from pig ranadas, so rest in peace easily obtained major food. Some drop rate changes. Potions of return can drop from cavern layered pots, which is pretty huge. Slime staff can come from king slime, pearls are more common, and deer things spawn in the snow biome instead of suspicious looking eyes. Pretty good changes overall. Bacon was a major source of cancer, and I think regulatory oversight is good to have. Watches don't need a table and chair anymore, and endless ammo needs 9999 to craft now. What useless items. They sucked in 1.4.4. They lost all relevancy once ammo was able to stack to 9,999 and you could carry 40,000 bullets in ammo slots. Now, the recipe is over twice as expensive. I understand the change, it's still kinda silly. Unholy arrows are much more craftable, which makes them more feasible to get before the evil boss. Poison darts take an anvil to craft? Why? Who is it at Relogic that just hates darts? It's a dart. You are firing a stinger that was carved to be a bit more aerodynamic. It's not using metal. Golden Delight from Golden Carp means that it is a decent source of tier 3 food. You can also cook owls and craft furnaces from corrupted stone. Pylons are sold regardless of happiness. Again, not a fan of changes that just encourage not interacting with the game, and this is one of those changes. There's not much reason to engage with the happiness mechanic, and pylons have effectively gone from a good idea that takes a little effort to mandatory and you don't have to think about them at all in this update. Some price changes, easier to get the whip from the zoologist, and you can get specter goggles much earlier in the game. Fewer bees in Not the Bees, which kinda seems like it defeats the purpose, and also the entire crafting UI was overhauled and now draws from all chests in an 11-tile radius with a search menu. Not a fan of that either. I think it again just encourages players to not meaningfully engage with the game. There's no thinking about what you're doing, or planning, or sorting chests, or even just a baseline. I want to do X, so I should do Y. You just type the item you want and craft it. Changes like that kind of concern me, and there were several in this update. There comes a point where quality of life just starts stripping the soul from a game and encouraging players to just not engage with it in a meaningful way. Even if you can disable it, I don't think the option to disable a quality of life feature that's incredibly powerful excuses a poor game design decision. The balance also is kind of all over the place. Melee, the class that was already very strong, gets huge buffs, a ton of attention, and very strong weapon changes, while the Thunder Zapper had its mana cost reduced from 7 to 6. All darts, even poison darts, get nerfed for some reason, and summoner players have the monkey's paw curl when they get their reforges, and remove whip stacking and add random attack variations that have smaller hitboxes and make whips feel a lot worse to use. And this isn't even getting into the new stuff they added. I'm not sure anyone at Relogic actually playtests mounts because Chillet and the roller skates are genuinely unbelievable. Mounts like the Wolf were good in 1.4.4 but flew under the radar because they were niche. Now, you can just buy them or get them very easily, and it's very obvious how busted they are. Super fast, and Chillet just gives a 10% damage buff at all times. That's ridiculous. The Shrimpy Truffle late game is 15%, and you have to stay below half HP or be in the rain to get that. I'm expecting a lot of balance adjustments in the next week or two. There's no way the Mandible Blade and Stylish Scissors can stay how they are, and I really hope something is changed about whip animations because they just feel bad. There is a lot of good stuff in this update, and I like a lot of it, but there's a lot that feels overbuffed and a lot that just feels nerfed for seemingly no reason. And stuff that was very strong in 1.4.4 didn't really get touched. There really are very few weapon nerfs. Going back to Summoner, it has whip stacking removed so that you're encouraged to only use one whip. and the Snapthorn, which is available at the start of the game without that much difficulty, is better than most of the new whips that got added. So even though Summoner objectively has more options, those whips are weaker than what already existed, and there's no incentive to use them except to get the Snapthorn and then get rid of them. So even though it looks like Summoner has a bunch of new toys, I didn't find them that appealing, and I ended up just using melee weapons when I went in intending to play Summoner because they were just so much more effective and interesting. And the stuff that did get nerfed, I don't know if I'm out of touch or if Relogic is out of touch, but the Flink's staff, darts, and the Hellfire are not the weapons that I would have considered to be poorly balanced and needing adjustments. To be clear, I don't think melee weapons that are bad getting buffed is a bad thing, but it would be nice if anywhere near the same level of attention that was paid to melee got given to other classes. There were also a lot of changes that just felt like fixing things that slightly inconvenienced players that didn't really need to be changed. I don't think minor inconveniences like needing to make an NPC slightly happy or not being able to use pylons during bosses needed to be fixed. If that genuinely felt like a problem, I would add a way for players to figure out what the NPC likes in-game and let them work from there. If they don't know about pylons, they'll see that their NPCs like doing things, put NPCs together, lower prices, and then see pylons. There's a quote about players optimizing the fun out of the game if you let them, and I think this is similar. If you treat every complaint as something to fix, you remove a lot of what makes the game fun and just hold the player's hand. What some players find inconvenient, others like, but complaints are much more frequent and loud than affirmations. I like thinking about what I'm doing and being rewarded for engaging with the game. That's why I play games. It feels satisfying going, okay, I need lenses, lead, and souls. I get my lead from my metals chest, lenses from my potions chest, and souls from my hard mode chest, and craft a boss summon. Now, I don't even need to open or sort chests or think about the recipe. I just type the word in the crafting box. Terraria is the 7th best-selling game of all time. It doesn't need changes like this to appeal to a wider audience, nor are these systems things that the player base had huge issues with, as far as I'm aware. Tmod Loader had mods to address stuff like this for people that wanted them. This is basically magic storage, but I, and a lot of other players, did not like playing with those mods. They're objectively better than not playing with them. I'm not going to disable them, they're like auto-fire. There's even effectively an auto-elevator item now. There comes a point where quality of life detracts from the game, and I think Terraria has crossed that line. Thanks again to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. Check the link in the description to get 4 extra months on your subscription.